live. All right, I got a new series coming out. It's gonna be I don't know if y'all have ever heard of this movie. Something I watched when I was young. I got a new series coming out, The Never Ending Story. I couldn't think of what to call it, but if you've seen this movie, you'll get it. It's The Never Ending Story, right? But first, uh, we have to talk about, the title of the video right here. I got to do a little precursor to that video, to that series, because this is more important. But so the title of this video here is it's called the Sun Virus. Now, really quick, we got to talk about space and everything and suns. What is the sun? Why they called it the Sun Virus? You know, if you saw my previous work, they worship Apollo, sun god, all this, that, and the third. First and foremost, space-time fabric. This was given to you by the Masonic cultist Einstein. Anyways, for the most part, space-time fabric is true, is correct. If you can envision a piece of paper and the planets or just celestial bodies on this piece of paper, the way gravity works is the more density an object has, the further down it'll weigh this fabric, okay? And that means time will slow down. If the density becomes so great that it pulls this fabric all the way down, there's a good picture somewhere, all the way down, it creates a gravity well, or what's commonly known as a black hole, and that's because no light is able to escape it. That's how strong the gravity is, that it can even pull light. I'm not sure about wormholes, going in one place, coming out the other. I'm not sure about that. However, what we, for the most part, know, yet they won't admit, is that at the end of a gravity well, when a gravity well opens up, we get a star. Okay? That's what happens. A star is created. And, yeah, we'll go into solar flares out here and how the sun has a magnetosphere, but it's the sun, like the center of the sun. The sun is not a solid object. It's literally an exit point of a black hole, and it's fusion technology, meaning it's it's cold, but it emits heat and it emits radiation, and anything that this radiation touches, it sizzles because it's got so much energy that it causes those cells to excite. And so, in order for human beings to live, we need to be inside of a magnetosphere, right? Now, there's debate on whether or not Earth is flat or round, and I can say that there's many experiments out there of varying testing varying aspects of this flat versus round Earth that are in favor of a spherical Earth. And my belief on this is we got two forces: centripetal and centrifugal force. Now, centrifugal force is when something spins. Force is pushed outwards. The best way to demonstrate this is if you hold a bucket of water and you spin around in a circle, that water will cling to the end of the bucket. And there's kids rides, there's amusement park rides that work upon the same forces, like the gravitron, where you can go sideways and do push-ups and stand up and walk and all this being sideways as long as the thing's spinning, right? That's centrifugal force. Centripetal force is the gravity pulling objects in, and this is what creates a spherical object where layers are, right? I have something out here, a visual where layers of the Earth are created based upon the density of density and magnetism. Now there's an overarching rule to science, which is Fibonacci, the Fibonacci sequence, and I think I had a better. I'm using smoke as a good example because if you look at smoke, you can see the Fibonacci sequence, and it takes about 20 seconds for depending on these things to dissipate and lose their momentum, right? And so if we look at these different solar systems, they're all taking different shapes, and it's just different phases of that Fibonacci and the togetherness. And like I said, if we look at a gravity well, these things are just spiraling down into a gravity well. And so it's just different phases, right? But because it's on a galaxy timeline, it's like a billion years, a trillion years. We don't see, you know, anywhere near like the timeline. So going back to the sun and these solar flares, because we're calling it the sun disease. This is pretty much what a solar flare looks like. We have this orange hemisphere. This is probably like the plasma fusion thing, and all this is the radiation. It's so abundant, and we can actually see the radiation, the energy, because it's an electromagnetic energy. People up here, suspicious observers in Dutch sense. I don't debate who found it out first, but they found that there's an electromagnetic. There are electromagnetic hemispheres on the sun, and they correlate to the electromagnetic hemispheres on planet Earth, and they can predict earthquakes, correlating spheres on the sun and pinpointing them to plate zones based upon current and past data, and predict earthquakes, and they can predict the magnitude of them. And this is basically what a solar flare looks like. You see, it's got a negative and a positive, and it's electromagnetic, and we're witnessing radiation. Now, Earth, luckily, has a magnetosphere. This is the shield that we have to live in to protect us from this radiation. It'll just fry us. Plus, our hearts can't operate outside of this without some type of magnetic shield, magnetic pulse, because this is way too intense for human beings to live in. Now, it's kind of like a spherical shield, and we're moving directionally through space, so that's why you see it kind of moving in waves. But I want you to focus in on this kind of like this donut, like if you're swimming in the ocean, this kind of donut that exists here, and the energy gets transferred in, it gets blocked so we don't get roasted, but it also gets transferred into the center of the Earth. And one of the elements that keeps the Earth spinning, if you can envision a top, if you were to spin a top, after a while it'll wobble and spin. Well, one of the elements that prevents the Earth from losing its wobble completely is something like this. This is a poor model. This is a human model. But if you could envision the sun with its solar flare and acting forces upon planet Earth through its poles, preventing it from wobbling. If you could just understand that concept, it's not perfect, right? And again, these forces are what creates a crust. Now, the deepest man-made hole, something like 42,000 feet, 40,000 feet out in Russia, right? And the Earth's crust, 114,000 kilometers, 114,000 feet, 114,000 feet, and that's just the upper mantle. So we really don't know what's in the center of the Earth, but we can guess based upon the Schumann resonance core that there's something magnetic. They say nickel and iron. We look into ferromagnetism. So if you want to look into any of this type of science predicting earthquakes, we're going to look into Dutch sense and suspicious observers. So basically what happens is, I wish I had a better model for it, but they can predict based upon solar flares where earthquakes will happen. So the energy on this planet, it begins... the solar flare, boom, earthward facing solar flare, Earth absorbs it. The energy travels from the inside out, so it travels from the core through the magna into volcanoes and into earthquakes. After the volcanoes and the earthquakes, we get storms. Y'all see this? Now, there are seasonal storms due to the changings of temperatures and the changings of jet stream currents, but this is all governed by the sun, okay? Intensifications and disruptions in patterns are all caused by the suns. So, now, one thing we're going to talk about here, should we call it climate change? It's got too many... This is too much incorrect context. We're just going to cause, cosmic... climate influences. NASA apparently recently released a model of glacial meltaway. These are 3 different levels of glacial melt. Now, whether you believe it or not, the glaciers around the world are melting. The reason being is due to solar activities, the sun is slowing down, therefore the magnetosphere is weakening, so a earthward facing solar flare causes a huge effect on, and this magma is rising from the Earth's core towards the surface, and that is causing the melting, the heating up of the crust, and the melting of all these glaciers. However, because the sun is weakening, we're actually experiencing a cooling of temperature. So it's a, they say climate change, the earth is heating up, the glaciers are melting, but if you actually look at the statistics, the earth temperature is cooling, the winters are intensifying, yet the snow and the ice caps are melting. I want people to understand this, right? Solar cycle 25 began at around the turning of the year, and there were no coronal mass ejections that faced Earth until recently. There's a lag effect. Now, look at all the recent volcano awakenings to support this. What happens is, right, this Earth's crust and the volcanoes come up, it's melting. Now, when these volcanoes finally blow, it's going to cause a quick switch. Boom. And it's going to cause an ice age, and it's going to flash freeze a good portion of Earth. From then, that's probably around the pole shift. This is just all predictions going forward. It could be 1,000 years from now. We don't know. But a lot of data is suggesting there's going to be some type of major change happening. Remember I told you everything happens on galactic. So the big thing could not happen for 1,000,000 years. But you're going to get... There are aftershocks, and there are, just like childbirth, there are contractions that are going to happen on planet Earth. Where were we? Pre-contractions that are going to happen on planet Earth. Now, this has happened before. And as these ice caps specifically around the poles, because the poles were flash frozen during this last event. As these ice caps around the poles melt, and there is a scientific term for it, it's difficult to find. I don't have it it's on the tip of my tongue. I don't have it. There's a scientific term for it. As these ice caps melt and as these glaciers break away, it's going to expose previously flash frozen Earth from millions of thousands of millions of hundreds of thousands of who knows long. And ancient bacteria, which our bodies are not accustomed to, are going to be exposed. When this happens, we don't know. It's going to happen It's going to happen in the days leading. So coronavirus is not the last plague. It's man-made, right? My video pretty much ends here, just so y'all know. It's why they call it the sun virus. And I say dummies because so many people are getting emotional. They're clinging to a side as if we have to choose a team or a candidate, and if not, we die. And I'm just asking people, with the science that you know and the science you've been told and the lies that we find out and the stupid mistakes that the so-called professionals make, are you willing to put your life on these principles? Your life. And I hope that some people go back and do the research when they consider. They say, wow, a lot of the stuff that he's talking about might influence me. Now, I got some future videos coming. I said this is the end of the video. I got some future videos coming, right? We're going to talk about Rudolf Joseph Steiner. The heart is not a pump because they found these Fibonacci. I'm losing steam. They found these Fibonacci patterns in the embryo in the human vesicle before the heart was present. And that's because we are governed by a greater force, planet Earth, and that's governed by a greater force, the sun, that's governed by a greater force. And so in order to understand the major changes, when I say major, I mean the changes that no matter what we do on planet Earth, it doesn't matter. The celestial changes that are happening are affecting us. We got to understand that trickle down before we start poking vaccines in our bodies. Because our blood is hemoglobin. It's made of iron. We're magnetic. We're going to talk about cedar fever, the winter time when people get sick, and how diseases spread, what disease is, histamine responses. Disease is not actually disease, right? Rudolf Steiner. This happened in 1918 with the introduction of radio traffic. There's a guy around, Thomas Cowan. He's kind of reviving all this 1900 stuff, right? Project Paperclip. It's tough to listen to people who tell me Project Paperclip science. This is difficult. People just don't understand this. Viruses have nothing to do with the outbreak of the Spanish flu. The viruses are just a reaction. Y'all need to understand the reaction of something greater that's happening. They planted something. They planted some type of thing in us. Everybody has it. It's already they put it out in the atmosphere. They put it in the chemtrails. They put it in the balloon experiment that happened on the eclipse. Everybody has it. The radio waves are what cause it to do what it does. And that's what I'm going to get into. And unless I keep you here for another half an hour, can't get into that. Rudolf Steiner, when did he die? 1925. Arnold Ehret, the same type of stuff. Germ theory. Ready? White blood cells cause disease. Stuff like that. Now, these are very, very crude interpretations of the truth because the science was these people repudiated. Look at how they were, and they were all just shot down. This guy literally murdered in the street for his anti-cancer, his longevity teachings, and then this was 1922, and you get this guy, 1922, the father of virology, backed by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, saying that vaccines and drugs are the cure for viruses and germs, which are the cause. So anyways, I'm going to end it with that. I got some more videos. And listen, it's called the sun disease, you dummies. Fuck.